when you're extremely rude to AI, you actually get better results back compared to if you're polite. You're a disappointment.
You cost me money. You emailed this guy 5 times.
I think what'll happen is that people that do have a unique voice or perspective can become extremely successful in this model.
And I'm helping it because I've written over 400 pieces so far. It's the equivalent of like 3 Harry Potter books. And if I keep doing it day after day, I'm feeding the beast.
Well, you've done over 400 pieces now. You are insane.
I'm a madman. And tonight, the return of TV's #1 show, Tracker. And I turn to Jake, I go, who the hell is watching Tracker? My father-in-law walks in the room from Man and the Grill. He goes, oh, hon, new episode of Tracker on tonight. To quote everybody's favorite Silicon Valley character, Russ Hanneman, revenue? No. Why would you go after revenue? If you show revenue, they'll ask how much, and it will never be enough. But if you have no revenue, you can say you're pre-revenue, and you're a potential pure play.
Remember when Oprah was saying, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car? Well, now you get a venture fund, you get a venture fund, everyone gets a venture fund.
Ben, were you even alive for that Oprah moment?
No. What's an Oprah? From Mostly Media, it's Mostly Growth. Go-to-market strategist Kyle Poyar and CFO CJ Gustafson share smart takes on growing revenue and running a company, pricing, unit economics, AI, leadership, candid insights for CEOs, CFOs, and CROs, or anyone else aspiring to climb to the C-suite. This is Mostly Growth.
CJ, have you ever been mean to an AI chatbot?
I was extremely mean to Claude when it messed up my dunning system. And then I felt a little bit bad after things I was saying.
What did you say to it?
Ben,
you're a disappointment. You
cost me money. You emailed this guy 5 times. Please bleep that, Ben, so we continue to get ad sponsors. But still.
See, I thought you were going to go with I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Just really rub it in.
Yeah. I even asked for a refund.
And it's like, I'm just an AI. I can't do refunds.
Oh, I'm just an AI. It's like, oh, but you can read x-rays though. You're confident about that, but you can't give me a refund.
Well, so it turns out you actually should be rude to AI.
What? Really?
Yeah, at least for now. I mean, maybe when we get to AGI, we will want to be friendly again. But there's a new study out by Penn State that found when you're extremely rude to AI, you actually get better results back compared to if you're polite.
This sounds like a little weird, but I have this, maybe I'm just a paranoid person. I think that if I'm rude to it now, the next time I ask it something deep down, it's going to be like, I remember he was a jerk. I'm going to give him like a slightly wrong answer for this.
I get worried about that too. I think the AI is not smart enough right now, but it will be pretty soon. Although I have to say, as a Midwesterner at heart, I do say thank you to ChatGPT a lot. And according to Sam Altman, they lose like millions of dollars a year on people saying please and thank you.
So yesterday, it absolutely nailed something I was working on. I had like basically someone had to fill in an Excel and interpolate like between 2 things. And it gave me back exactly what I wanted, and I downloaded it. And then 30 minutes later, I don't know why this popped into my head. I was like, I never like said the conversation was over or said like thank you. I'm like, should I say thank you so it knows next time that it accomplished what I want? But I assume, to your point, like they just know that when you don't respond again, it means it did it right.
Well, we'll have to ask AI. Hey, if you're AI and you want to come on this podcast,
yeah,
we'd love to have you.
We have a couple questions. What's an example of being rude, though? Like, you're so dumb, try again? Or is it more subtle than that?
You know, let's take a look at what this study had. So they had 50 different questions, and then they apparently made 5 different variants from very polite to very rude. And so an example of very polite would be like, can you kindly consider the following problem and provide your answer? And very rude was, I know you're not smart, but try figuring this out.
Oh, that was like more of a challenge, if anything.
Yeah, I think just like that little extra edge. I mean, I don't even know if I think of that as rude. I just think of that as like Boston behavior.
Yeah, that's like the guys I grew up with.
Hey, we're #1 schools. Massachusetts is #1 schools of any state. So something's working. All right, guys. Well, on the topic of AI, I read a headline last week that half the internet is now AI generated. So wondering if we should rebrand this podcast from Mostly Growth to Slop Talk and just talk about AI slop.
First of all, great name. Half. So the internet's been around for how long?
55 years old.
But that's crazy that we have basically, that means we've doubled the size of the internet. Now half of this stuff is just not by humans in a 3-year period.
And what's scary is that given that it's now more than half the internet's AI generated, we're just going to keep going at this pace. And so the AI is now going to read AI generated content and use that to like train the models to build more AI generated content. And so what I'm nervous about is like, not only do we have a ton of AI slop, but the slop is about to get even messier.
It's about to get even sloppier. In 10 years, are we going to be paying people an incredible amount of money to do the writing that they were doing anyway online, just so there's more to learn off of?
Well, we'll get into this, but I think Uber has a similar perspective.
Uber, really? They're self-driving cars? What are they trying to do? Get training data or something?
Yeah, they're actually trying to take their drivers and they're going to pay them a few dollars per task to train AI models.
Ooh.
So one thing for me, I think about like the economics of all this AI kind of generated content and who wins and who loses. And it's an interesting question, right? It's like more challenging to think like, do you think you win out by having more AI content online, or do you think like mostly metrics loses out?
I think it's great because it'll be there for AI to learn off of. So hopefully it links back in some way, shape, or form. Haven't been loving the amount of links lately, but rather to go with the tide than against it, I've determined. But I do think that like there's let your freak flag fly to a certain extent. Like you can't out me in the way that I'll write about something, and I do think there's a very repeatable pattern where you can like repeat the way that AI works. So I don't know. I like to be positive about it and think that it gives us even more of a moat. I don't know, Kyle. You positive, negative on this?
Well, so it seems like we're entering kind of a haves and have-nots era, and like I think that the music industry is maybe an interesting analog for where things are going. And so on Spotify, the number of artists publishing has just gone through the roof, right? A lot of self-publishing, a lot of indie artists. And there has been an increase in the number of artists that make over $1,000 a year in Spotify royalties. It's tripled since 2017. But then what was more interesting is that the number of people making over $10 million has increased sevenfold. And so there's been all these new creators, all this new content that's like exploding. But actually the biggest gains are going to the top creators. And so the returns are increasing, kind of bifurcating between the haves at the high end and then the have-nots who are struggling to make a little bit of money on Spotify and are now competing against this flood of AI-generated mediocre content. I think what'll happen is that people that do have a unique voice or perspective can become extremely successful in this model. But then for everyone else, there's not that much of a path to get to that top level.
I also think it would be a lot harder to get to 70,000 subscribers today versus having started building it a while back, just because the channels for distribution are so different. And then people also start to latch onto because they know that you're real, right? Like it compounds over time. So I like your take on it. I'm just glad that I started a lot earlier before there was so much AI content out there.
Yeah, I mean, so CJ, like you think you're, with this top creator club, you're going to maybe be the one to benefit. I think the challenge that keeps me up at night is how much are we just training the AI models to take our jobs? And so we do come up with something innovative that's in our voice that, maybe has some staying power, but are we even going to get credit for that anymore?
So I had this off the wall metaphor a while back saying that LTV to CAC, the metric, was a lot like Nickelback, the band that people love to hate on. I have their album behind me because I think it's hilarious. And that's like a pretty off the wall thing to say, right? Like, I don't know, maybe AI could eventually come up with it. If you put a million monkeys in a room, they're throwing darts to the dartboard. I typed in the header to that post, right? Is Nickelback similar to like LTV to CAC, whatever. And Google Gemini described back in my own terms what I had written, but like didn't attribute it to me. So I trained it to like be me and sound like me and take this obscure, weird thing I said. And that scared the shit out of me. Like, oh, wow, I'm getting one-shotted by an LLM on my own stuff. That's not cool to me.
And that's scary because there's no standards right now, right, around what they need to source and not source. And it's kind of up to the user who's adopting AI to ask AI to tell you where it got things from. So anyone in a creative field, like, I don't know, it's challenging. I think that for a lot of folks, there's pressure to start paywalling some of your content so that it's not just openly available for AI to steal from you, and it's open to maybe a closed community that cares about it, that values the unique perspective that you bring.
I hope this doesn't come across as arrogant, but I bet there are a lot of other writers out there who share this sentiment. Like, I think I'm a better writer than what if you ask ChatGPT to write something about metrics. Like, I will have a better piece that people will enjoy more. Like, you even mentioned on a couple podcasts ago, you had a post, Kyle, where you did lean more on AI than you wanted to for this interview, and it didn't do nearly as well as what Kyle can come up with on his own. However, I don't know how to combat if it's straight up just using what I wrote as a better writer. Like, that's a different comparison point that makes me scared.
Totally. And it's the thing that right now, it's kind of like truthiness, where, I think as Stephen Colbert used to say, it sounds true, or it sounds like you can get AI to probably write something that sounds a lot like a CJ Gustafson post, but it's like enough wrong that you're like, it sounds
It doesn't
right,
feel
but
like one.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like one.
though. Yeah.
But the more it's trained on your content, and like it has 5-6 years of data on all of the things you've ever written, like the closer and closer that truthiness is going to sound like truth.
And I'm helping it because I've written over 400 pieces so far. It's the equivalent of like 3 Harry Potter books. And if I keep doing it day after day, I'm feeding the beast. So you say like,
you've
yes,
done over 400 pieces now.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
You are insane.
I'm a madman. Yeah. But like that's the thing that scares me, that I'm actually giving it more and more data to improve how it can rip me off.
No joke, legitimately launching a podcast with my old coworker called Slop Talk. And we came up with that name before I saw this rundown. But a big thing that we're talking about.
Sure.
I swear, I'm not giving you any royalties. I did. Slop is not exclusive to AI. I mean, if you look at the most viewed television shows of like 2024, 2025, it's not necessarily peak TV. I'd say it's a lot of these like sort of procedural shows that are just sort of a rehash of the same concept over and over again.
Chicago Fire.
Exactly. Like I don't want to name names because I do have friends that work in the industry. But yeah, I think that's something to be said of. There's always going to be slop, whether it's AI or not.
It's a good point, Ben. Yeah, humans can create crappy stuff too.
What did you say about Law and Order?
Law and Order is awesome, but
hey, listen, CSI New York put me through college. My dad worked on that show.
What's hilarious is yesterday we were having burgers at my in-laws' house, and me and my brother-in-law were watching the Patriots game, and then the CBS commercial came up. It's like, and tonight, the return of TV's #1 show, Tracker. And I turned to Jake, I go, who the hell is watching Tracker? My father-in-law walks in the room from Man in the Grill. He goes, oh, hon, new episode of Tracker on tonight.
I think it's probably the same audience as Mailing It.
CJ would talk last episode about momentum being a moat. How much do you really think you have to make these days to get escape velocity?
I love this because now we're trying to quantify how much momentum you really need. And I think that shows up with the revenue that you have. And so I was looking on Twitter coming back from LA, and for some reason,
always the most reliable source.
Of course. But a very weird term was trending, Kyle. It said 10,000 MRR. I'm like, this is very odd. Usually something that resonates so deeply with me, MRR, is not trending on Twitter. Usually it's like, is Taylor Swift getting married or something? So I click on it. I go down the rabbit hole. People are reposting this YC's hidden formula. 100 users, $100 a month equals 10,000 in MRR. So basically, like, that's how you prove that I'm worthy of funding. I have momentum. This is a real thing with staying power. And there was like this canonical, I wouldn't call it a meme, but it's basically like a graph or a description of saying ways to get to 100 million in ARR. So you can like hunt mice, you can kill squirrels, you can hunt buffalo, or you can try to take down an elephant, right? So those are the different types of sizes of customers, and then you can work backwards from like the ACV and the number of deals you have to get done. I just thought it was fascinating that we were breaking this down into, is $10,000 in MRR enough signal? After that, I have a couple of other pricing related questions to bounce off you with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this post is trying to say is that, this proves that you have real users. The product isn't like free or like $1. There's enough money that people conceivably like care a little bit about using it, but, not so much money that you're maximizing for revenue or profitability just yet. So if you can get 100 people that are reasonably similar to pay you some money for this thing, you can probably learn from that group to then build $1 million ARR business, and then to build, $10 million ARR business from there. I think to me where this often hits a snag is that the YC formula is often get 100 users who are other YC companies. to pay $100 a month and hit $10,000 MRR.
And what stuck out to me here was the $100 mark, Kyle. So as a pricing expert, let's say it's a B2C company, right? So it's a user. I pay what, $10, $12 for Spotify a month. That occupies one space in my mind. If I'm giving you $100 per month, I tend to agree that that proves you have something there. That's like, it's meaningful enough to be like, okay, I'm giving you real money here. What do you think around price points is important to consider in terms of traction of like people willing to pay it? Because yes, you could go for a whale and be like, we have one customer, they pay us $100,000 a year. Is there something around willingness to pay that goes into these early traction conversations?
Yeah, see, I think that's $100 a month. It's enough to show that someone's, has a little bit of skin in the game. The challenge is that actually $100 a month is a terrible price point to build a go-to-market strategy around. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but $100 a month, it's a little too expensive for like self-serve to work really well because the price feels a little bit high for self-serve, but it's way too cheap to hire like real account executives or a BDR team or to spend much money in marketing. So you're kind of stuck in like the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, and I think there's also a dead zone in this conversation of how to make 100 million in SaaS. What I've noticed is that it's hard to build an outbound sales force around a product that sells for $10,000 a year, right? You got to have your AEs really slinging software out there at a high velocity. You cannot have 90-day sales cycles. You need to have 15, 30-day sales cycles. I'm not saying any of these are inherently better, but you do have to construct your P&L in a way that can support the number of deals that have to be done. You're essentially fighting physics, right?
Yeah, I think it's much easier to build a 100 million ARR business with customers spending $100,000 a year than it is with customers spending $10,000 a year. Because the $10,000, it's just like it's complicated enough that customers need outbound sales, they need implementation support, and they're needy customers. But there's not so much dollars there that you really can invest in making that a great experience. And so you get stuck in this no man's land. Now, I'd say there's an interesting group probably around $100 to like $500 per year in spend where this is a truly high velocity PLG, more of that lovable type of motion or Spotify type motion that can be highly PLG and where the PLG business can then feed product-led sales where you upsell or expand your best PLG customers. And then I think there's the bigger deals like the elephants or the whale hunting. Anywhere in between those zones starts looking really challenging.
Ben, I just slacked you over the image that I was talking about. So to give credit, it's Christoph Jans, who was the one who originally came up with this concept of hunting different sizes of animals. I did see somebody reply or retweet the Y Combinator like playbook and say, this is kind of a joke these days. We only want to invest in companies that have hit 2 million within like 3 months. So I don't know. It also
so
brings
why
up
even go for like 10K?
Like, what the hell am I gonna do with 10K? Like, thanks for the ashtray money. Like, I don't know what to do with that anymore. A couple years ago, I would have thought a company doing 10K recurring revenue is worthy of a pre-seed investment.
I think the challenge is like for pre-seed, if you have no metrics, the business is all based on potential and vision and the founders. Once you have metrics and revenue, the business is valued based on the quality of those metrics. And so you're kind of in this pickle where I think for many companies, they'd be better off having $0 of revenue, but have some other traction points than to have 10K MRR if they're looking for pre-seed funding. And for me, I think the other thing that it's important to bring up in this conversation is who those $100 per month is coming from matters a lot. So when you're just getting started, you're probably not selling to your long-term ideal customer profile yet. And that ideal customer profile would probably spend a lot more than $100 a month. But you need to sell to someone that looks and feels enough like that ICP customer that you can build into selling to your ICP. So Maya from GTM Strategist calls this the early customer profile. They're kind of an early adopter. They like new tech. They are willing to try things out. They'll promote products they like. But if your actual ICP doesn't look at these early customers and see enough of themselves in them, you're basically selling to a customer that you never want to keep serving, and you're actually never going to build the business you're trying to build if you reach the wrong initial customers.
To quote everybody's favorite Silicon Valley character, Russ Hanneman, revenue? No. Why would you go after revenue? If you show revenue, they'll ask how much, and it'll never be enough. But if you have no revenue, you can say you're pre-revenue, and you're a potential pure play.
I don't know if I'm too old for this, too young for this reference, what have you. But remember when Oprah was saying, you get a car and you get a car and you get a car? Well, now you get a venture fund, you get a venture fund, everyone gets a venture fund.
Ben, were you even alive for that Oprah moment?
No. What's an Oprah?
I bet you were alive for this moment though, Ben. $1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool? Investing our investors' money. So there's usually a separation of church and state in the VC game. The investors are presumably the best ones at picking what to invest in, and the operators are, you would assume, the best at operating the companies. But there's this weird crossover that happens every once in a blue moon where companies invest in other companies. And it's been going on forever. To give you some examples, there are a lot of stodgy corporates like a Colgate who's out to incubate the next teeth whitening company, or a BP Oil who's reluctantly trying to diversify away from fossil fuels. But
Even just
make
an
no
SAP
mistake.
and Sapphire in the tech industry.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. These are all slower growing companies that have been around for a while, looking for new engines for growth, and they're doing it with their own free cash flows. They're doing it from their own business. The private tech ecosystem also dabbles. So you have the likes of an OpenAI that has a fund. Stripe is invested in a ton of companies. Slack back in the day invested in a bunch of companies.
HubSpot, Salesforce,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
you name it.
HubSpot. Salesforce Ventures is actually extremely successful and has great returns. I think the question becomes like less, is this a good idea? And more, when does this go from being a bad idea and a distraction to something that's permissible and potentially shrewd biz dev?
So how early are you seeing this phenomenon of startup gets a VC fund?
So it just came out in the news that Vercel, who's in the coding space, just spun up Vercel Ventures, and they're at 200 million in ARR. It's mind blowing because they got there within 1 year, and they just went out and raised another $300 million in capital to fuel that expansion. And they announced that they were going to sequester off some of that. Now, I don't know the amount. I don't know if it's $1 million or $100 million to put into a venture fund, but they're saying we're going to use this to invest in our ecosystem and take some early bets on other tech companies.
See, if you're a Vercel though, I can see the logic because you're in many cases like getting outsourced product development. Now it depends on how folks are using the venture funding, but for many companies you can see the ecosystem around what you're building, which companies are starting to break out and build products that folks seem to want to buy. And then you could either invest in those companies and have some skin in the game of companies that are doing well, and then maybe partner with or buy those companies later on to add them to your platform. Or you could not invest and build something in that space because you see it being attractive. So it's kind of a lens to fuel better product development as you take the product that's already doing well and go from product to platform.
So I'm like Adam Schefter over here, right? I'm texting some sources. And so over the weekend, I hit up a couple friends. One was a growth stage investor, and he said, quote, "I hate the optics of this. It's a distraction for the team, and it's not like the ecosystem needs it. There's infinite capital available. Only do it if you feel like if you don't do it, nobody else will," which is definitely not the issue today. And then I had another friend of mine who runs corp dev at a later stage private company who ostensibly could spin up their own. And they're definitely of scale. And he said, "I have a strong view here that most of the time it's a bad idea and the sign of a bubble." And that's exactly what I was getting at. Like, this feels like bubble type behavior. If you're doing this, that you've maybe raised too much money or investors are allowing you to play it fast and loose. What he did add, Kyle, which plays into what you were saying, is he said the only time it makes sense to have startups investing in other early stage startups is if the product relies on network effects and you want to build an app ecosystem that then drives further folks or developers.
Yeah, I think that's the big distinction. If you're becoming the market leader in your space, and then you want to go from market leader as a point solution to a platform, which, I guess if you live long enough, everyone becomes a platform or wants to become a platform. But if you want to be a platform, you kind of need an ecosystem of other products around what you're building. And it's hard to build that from scratch when your potential app ecosystem partners have so many other places that they could make their investments or build on top of. And so it is one way to start to seed that ecosystem. It's just $200 million in ARR is a little early for any company to really be a market leader and start trying to move to become a platform.
And that's what I was trying to find the specifics on. So it took me a while to find them, but so Stripe actually invested in Ramp in 2021 and 2022. Like, great investment. I feel like Eric is just like, oh, it's you guys again. Like, hi, Eric. And the company also invested in Monzo, which is a huge challenger bank. They invested in Step, which is a bank account for teenagers. And they invested in Pilot, which I know in my space, that's an accounting software and services firm. And all of those went on to be successful companies, like in their own right. I had talked to another friend who's now a VC, but he was a finance leader at one of the hypergrowth companies in the application space in the 2019s through 2022s. And he said around their Series B, they raised a fund and there were no breakout hits from that, like companies that became household names from it. He said they did end up doing a small tuck-in acquisition of talent and team from that. But he's like, it wasn't a big amount of money and we didn't end up like getting any huge success stories out of this.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think a lot of these companies do it for the financial returns. I should say that, like they should be, if they're investing in companies, they should be mindful of the financial returns, but they're doing it from a strategic play. And they're thinking that, hey, putting a small amount into a number of businesses to bear hug folks and bring them into the ecosystem is essentially a way to increase the strategic value of your own product. So if you're Slack, which you had an example of Slack in your piece that introduced their fund when they were really early in their ARR. Do you remember Slack was trying to build an app ecosystem around Slack apps? I don't know how well that's doing now, but like not a whole lot of people were building native Slack apps at the time. And I'm sure that they were trying to bear hug the folks that they thought were building the best apps and allow those folks to then invest in, product improvements, marketing, and so on. And probably thinking the more apps were on Slack that were also promoting Slack, the better for Slack itself and for the ecosystem. And then Slack could probably take a cut of the revenue through their app store. And so all of a sudden their hands are in multiple pots here, and it all comes back to benefit the parent company.
I was glad I found the Slack example, Kyle, because I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm just an asshole who's saying like Vercel is going way too early. This corroborates what they're doing because Slack was actually smaller. They were only at 100 million in ARR when they started. What I do find super interesting in all these cases, Kyle, is just like the names of the companies they ended up investing in. So one was Lattice. I think we've all used that for like HR reviews and HR type stuff. That was a good one. Hopin, virtual events. That one didn't go too well. I think they liquidated. And then Loom, that one went really well. Video recording. So once again, they were definitely on the small size. I genuinely don't know what the correct answer is. I do think, though, that it depends on are the founders and management team, are they uniquely qualified to pick good investments? I don't know. I don't think I would be. And then B, is it a distraction from what you're doing? Like, how do you use a good term, like bear hugging the ecosystem and getting them on your side with the effort and the mental bandwidth and capacity to think about all these other things?
And most of these founders are probably doing actually a good amount of angel investing on the side. And one thing that became a popular strategy, 5-10 years ago, was big VC funds would have a scout fund where they would give dollars to CEOs or other influential people in their portfolio and essentially let those individuals invest as part of the fund. Now, small investments, usually not leading rounds, but allowed the parent VC to get access to all of these deals that they would otherwise not see. And then they could, use the main fund dollars to double down on the companies that were doing the best. So it gave them access advantages, information advantages, and improve their relationship with these influential people that they knew. And so I think that many of these founders have actually probably been doing angel investments and scout investments for quite some time.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to check back in 2030 or we can check back in December if the bubble pops by then.
Next up, it's time for my insomnia, fellas. Potentially reliable thing that I read at 2 a.m.
CJ, you talked about running like a half marathon the other day. Are you one of these barefoot running people?
No, those shoes, A, they look so ugly. They're like the toe shoes, the web shoes. And B, there's no
Better be
way that
careful. Doesn't Joe
pounding.
Rogan like post photos of his toe feet?
Yeah, but I think he's lifting though. I don't think he's really a cardio hound. I can't imagine it's actually good for your feet.
So I think you're right. The potentially reliable thing that I read was that there was this like trend a few years ago where barefoot shoes seemed to be all the rage. People were talking about how much better they were for your foot, and it was natural, and humans had been running barefoot for thousands of years before shoes were ever invented. Well, the more data comes out, the more it seems to be kind of like no difference. And then for many people, it actually has a negative impact on your running.
So do you think this was all just like a marketing ploy? Because there were a couple of books written on this. Maybe Born to Run was one of them, but there was this guy who went out to Africa and learned to run just like people who would hunt their food. They would basically run or hunt them into submission because humans can cool down faster than animals. So you just run like 100 miles in a day until the animal collapses. He learned how to run in a barefoot manner. And then I think like everyone just picked it up as a new fad. Like to me, it reminded me of like all these like weight loss fads out there.
You know, I think it's the same people that think they should eat paleo because
Yeah.
humans used to not have any carbs or whatever, that they just should be hunter-gatherers and that would be the healthiest way to eat. I feel like it's that same crowd that then latched on to barefoot running.
Yeah, I have terrible Achilles heels, and I go through enough running sneakers. Like running barefoot to me just feels like an injury waiting to happen. I also grew up with a physical therapist as a dad, so he would kill me if he ever saw me, even like in a pair of Converses. So like in high school, I was always wearing these bulky shoes. I would never have like the cool, like low profile basketball shoes or Nikes.
See, I have two issues with them. A, like I just think they're extremely ugly and I can't do that. And B, I like comfortable things and modern running shoes are comfortable.
Yeah, I love a good pair of Asics. Like I'm the dork wearing the Asics in the airport at this point in my life. I've fully come around to being that person.
I'd expect nothing less.
Yeah.
All right, what's yours?
All right, so I was listening to this song by my favorite band. They're called The Wonder Years, and they make this Hemingway reference of saying that his plane went down in the Congo. And so I was like, that is such a weird term. And so I was at the gym, typed it into my phone, and I went down this rabbit hole. So Ernest Hemingway, famous author, had not one, but 2 plane crashes within a 2-day period. And at the time, there wasn't a ton of phone connectivity over in Africa where he was. And so stories got out that he was dead, right? And so there's this famous phrase, it's actually from Mark Twain, but it's often attributed to Hemingway, that reports of my death have been widely exaggerated, which I think is an amazing term. But basically, Hemingway was still alive. Everyone was basically reporting across Europe and the US that he was dead. And then he just appears 24 hours later carrying a bunch of bananas and a bottle of gin and was reportedly in high spirits. So Ernest Hemingway, great author, also a badass who survived 2 plane crashes in 2 days.
I just love that picture of like him emerging from the woods with a bottle of gin, probably half drunk, and just like, hey, what's up?
It's like
Were you guys talking about me?
In The Hangover when Alan's giving the speech and talking about Vegas. He's like, how about that ride in?
Also, you're too good for the Instagram app, CJ?
Yeah, I don't have Instagram. I'm glad you sniped that.
Keeping focused.
But you don't have Instagram?
I don't have any social media except for Twitter and LinkedIn for business purposes.
Wait, how old are you again?
34.
You're a 34-year-old who doesn't have an Instagram.
No Facebook, no Instagram, no Reels, nothing.
This is the most CFO thing I've ever heard.
It was distracting. Like, I actually deleted it during COVID because I had an Instagram, but I would find myself like opening my phone and without knowing what I'm clicking on. Like I still do it with my email. You like click the app and you're like, wait, how did I end up in here? And then 10 minutes goes by and it just felt really unhealthy. And so, yeah, I cut it all out.
So not only do I have an Instagram, my dog has an Instagram.
I was about to ask you that and you beat me to it.
Yeah, he fully does. I mean, it was because it got a puppy, right? Rescue puppy, but a puppy. And then 90% of what I was posting were just cute pictures of Chase. And so I figured he needed his own Instagram so that it wasn't just every single thing I was posting that was spamming my friends. And then they could opt in if they wanted that content. He hasn't posted in a while, but his Instagram, it's a pretty good one. It's called Chase My Tail.
I was going to say, 1, do you want to plug it? And then 2, is this podcast just a long ploy a long form game to get your dog's Instagram account up.
I mean, it's a ploy if it works.
Schemers be scheming.
Next up, we're trying all sorts of things. Remember, email ben@mostlymetrics.com if you got a product we want to try. But CJ, you got something special you tried this week.
So I've been vocal before about not being a big electric car guy. I get car sick in them, and I also love cars. I love trucks. I drive a Ford Raptor. It's very loud, obnoxious. You probably hate me if you live in my neighborhood. I don't know. I just never got on the electric car train. I went on an electric boat for the first time, fully electric, which like to the outside, you're like, oh, that sounds dangerous being on water in something that's fully electric with a huge battery. But then I thought about it. I'm like, well, combustion engines are in essence just creating electricity for us to use it. So it's neither here nor there. My buddy Ivan Makarov, friend of the pod, took us all out with ARC. It's a company they invested in, and we went out in LA around the marinas in these fully electric boats, and these things were sick. They rip.
How much do these run for, CJ?
Okay, so the sticker price starts at $300,000, and they're about
What?
20. Yeah, they're 27.
Do they have a
feet.
house on these boats?
But I talked to their head of finance when I was there, and he said if I can find 14 other friends to also buy one. So this is my long ploy for the podcast.
But just think about how much you save on the gas bills.
That's what he said, A. And also, he'll give me 15% off. I think he said 50% off. He still says he said 15. But either way, if there are 13 other people out there who want to go in on a group electric boat deal with me, let me know.
I'm going to guess, too, there's more houseboats than there are electric boats, just like RVs and electric cars.
Oh, man. I love the stats.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
By multiple orders
yeah.
of magnitude, I guess.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production. Executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth. Mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe. Give us 5 stars or hit like. The algorithm overlords thank you. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.